Pay attention to 18-year-old Anita Knutson. It's Friday night, June 1st, 2007. Anita is on the phone with her mother. Her voice is calm, normal. She thinks she's safe in her apartment, but she isn't alone. In the room right next to her sits her roommate, Nichole Thomas. Anita has less than 48 hours to live. At some point that weekend, someone will enter her bedroom while she lies in bed and stab her twice in the chest with a crude pocket knife. On Monday morning, Anita's father will arrive at the apartment. The door will be locked from the inside. A window screen will be cut, with Anita's blood on it. Inside, he will find his daughter dead. Nichole Thomas will show no visible emotion. She won't ask who did this. She won't ask why. She will ask about her missing iPod. This isn't a story about a break-in gone wrong. It's a story about a toxic roommate situation that may have turned deadly. A case that went cold for 15 years. Anita Knutson was the girl everybody wanted to know. Born in California and adopted as an infant by Gordon and Sharon Knutson, she'd been raised in a close-knit family in North Dakota. By 2007, she was 18 years old, pursuing elementary education at Minot State University, living in her first off-campus apartment, working full-time to support her studies. She was independent, kind, the type who stood up for people being bullied. She talked to her mother almost every day. That close bond is what alerted the family something was wrong. When Anita didn't answer her mother's call on Saturday, June 2nd, Sharon felt uneasy. When Anita didn't return calls on Sunday, the unease grew into alarm. When the responsible student failed to show up for work on Saturday, behavior completely out of character, it suggested she may have already been dead. By Monday, June 4th, Sharon asked her husband Gordon to check on their daughter. When Gordon arrived at the apartment, Anita's car was parked nearby, but she didn't answer the door. Gordon sought help from the apartment manager, Laura Knapp. While they debated opening the door, the maintenance worker, Marty, the janitor, arrived and pointed out something specific. A window screen had been cut and was lying on the ground. Through the open window, Gordon pushed aside the blinds. He saw his daughter lying face down on her bed. He reached in, touched her, and realized she was cold. Anita was dead. When they entered the apartment, the scene was both brutal and confusing. Anita was face down on her bed, covered by an old robe. She'd been stabbed twice in the chest. One wound was fatal, severing her heart. The mattress was soaked in blood, yet the rest of the apartment appeared relatively undisturbed. Nothing of value was stolen. Her purse containing cash was visible. There was no evidence of sexual assault. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a random attack. This was personal. The forensic details were puzzling. A crude pocket knife was found at the scene, believed to be the murder weapon. The door was locked from the inside. If the killer was an intruder, they either had to exit through the window or had somehow locked the door behind them. But here's what made investigators suspicious. The window screen had been cut after the murder because Anita's blood was found on it. Think about that. Someone stabbed Anita to death and then cut the window screen afterward. Why would you cut a screen after committing murder unless you were trying to stage a break-in? Unless you were trying to make it look like an intruder had entered through that window when they actually hadn't. Police investigated hundreds of people. They examined neighbors, classmates, anyone connected to Anita. Several persons of interest emerged, but no arrests were made. The case went cold. Anita lived with a roommate named Nichole Thomas, and according to everyone who knew them, their relationship was toxic. Anita had complained to her family about Nichole's lifestyle. Arguments had escalated to screaming matches and physical confrontations. Anita had told friends she was afraid of Nichole. Her father had installed a lock on her bedroom door for safety, a lock meant to protect Anita from her own roommate. But Nichole had an alibi. She claimed she'd spent the weekend of the murder at her parents' farm. Her parents corroborated this. Despite the animosity between the girls, police initially cleared her due to the alibi and lack of physical evidence. There was also Tyler Schmaltz, a high school friend who'd taken Anita to prom. He was described as having an obsession with her, moving into her apartment complex, attending the same college just to be near her. Police questioned him repeatedly. He voluntarily submitted to DNA testing, which didn't match evidence at the scene. He was eventually cleared. And there was Marty, the janitor, the maintenance worker who had a pass key to all apartments and who was the one to point out the cut screen to Anita's father. His immediate observation of that screen struck some as suspicious. Was he trying to steer the narrative toward an intruder? Less than a year after the murder, Marty committed suicide. While police had seemingly dropped him as a suspect, his death fueled lingering speculation. For 15 years, the case remained unsolved. The psychological toll on the Knutson family was immense. In 2013, Anita's younger brother Daniel committed suicide. His family stated he never recovered from his sister's murder and cited it as the cause of his darkness. The Knutson family had now lost 2 children, one to murder, one to grief. In 2019, the Minot Police Department assigned new investigators to the case. In 2022, a television crew for the series Cold Justice arrived in Minot to film a segment. The show provided logistical support and forensic expertise, helping investigators review thousands of pages of evidence. This renewed scrutiny focused heavily on Nichole Thomas, who by now had married and become Nicole Rice. Investigators highlighted inconsistencies in her statements over the years. While she'd initially claimed to be at her parents' farm all weekend, witnesses alleged she'd made drunken confessions about the murder at parties in 2008 and 2009. Her reaction to news of Anita's death was described by officers as unusually flat. She seemed more concerned about a missing iPod than her dead roommate. When Detective Robert Barnard walked her through the crime scene, Nichole asked about her iPod. Not about what happened to Anita, not about who could have done this. She wanted to know where her iPod was. On March 16, 2022, 15 years after Anita's murder, Nicole Rice was arrested and charged with felony murder. She was working as a civilian at Minot Air Force Base at the time. The trial began in March 2025 in Grand Forks, North Dakota, due to high publicity in Minot. The prosecution's case relied on circumstantial evidence and alleged confessions. The defense argued the investigation was flawed and driven by media pressure. The prosecution painted a picture of a toxic roommate situation that spiraled out of control. Witnesses testified to the strained relationship. Matthew Hansen, Rice's former supervisor, testified that Rice was very angry about her living situation, complaining about being locked out of Wi-Fi. On the day the body was found, Rice called Anita a crackhead and refused to go home when police requested her presence. Donna Bieland, a former colleague, testified that Rice complained daily about Anita. She recounted a specific dispute where Anita allegedly killed Rice's fish by turning off the tank filter. Bieland stated that Rice told her, "You don't want to get me angry," and later mentioned she'd be fine if she kept her mouth shut. Sharon Knutson, Anita's mother, testified that her daughter was scared of Rice. Anita had been afraid in her own apartment, afraid of the person she was supposed to be living peacefully with. But the cornerstone of the prosecution's case was testimony about admissions of guilt Rice allegedly made while intoxicated. William May, an ex-boyfriend, testified that at a party in 2008, a drunken Rice stated she'd killed Anita. He claimed he cut ties with her afterward. Christina Haller, a former friend, testified that Rice admitted to stabbing Anita during an argument over an alarm clock. Haller claimed Rice was crying during this confession at a party. Police officers testified that Rice's story changed over time. Initially, she claimed she was at her parents' farm all weekend. Later, she admitted to being in the apartment on Friday night. Detective Barnard testified that Rice had no reaction at all to news of the death. Brenda Glynns, Rice's aunt, testified that Nicole had described Anita as looking so peaceful after the stabbing, a detail that struck prosecutors as incriminating knowledge. The trial lasted 7 days. The jury deliberated for just under 6 hours over 2 days. On March 26, 2025, the jury returned a verdict. not guilty. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted. Nichole Rice, now 37, burst into tears and embraced her attorneys. Her family and friends cheered. Anita Knutson's family quietly left the courtroom. Outside, Rice was seen holding hands and praying with her family. The acquittal was devastating to the Knutson family. Anita's sister, Anita Knutson released a statement. "I spent the last week reliving some of the hardest parts of the last 18 years of my life. And in those 18 years, one thing I've learned is that a not guilty verdict does not mean innocence. But my conscience is clear." The defense team later issued an apology for their emotional reaction in the courtroom, acknowledging their celebration might have been offensive to the grieving family. With Nichole Rice's acquittal, the murder of Anita Knutson remains legally unsolved. The case presents conflicting details that continue to fuel speculation. The locked room mystery remains unsolved. The door was locked from the inside. The screen was cut after the murder with Anita's blood on it. If the killer was an intruder, how did they lock the door? If the killer had a key, like a roommate, why cut the screen to stage a break-in? The DNA problem haunts the case. Despite recovery of DNA evidence from the scene and the knife, no match has ever been found in criminal databases. If Rice stabbed Anita violently enough to sever her heart, why was Rice's DNA not on the knife? Why was the victim's DNA not found on Rice? The brutality of the stabbing and lack of theft strongly suggest a crime of passion or rage. This fit the prosecution's theory of a domestic dispute gone wrong. But the defense successfully argued that roommate squabbles over fish and alarm clocks don't usually escalate to murder without a history of prior violence. The murder of Anita Knutson is a tragedy of layers. A young life cut short, a brother lost to grief, a justice system that after 18 years could not provide a definitive answer. The acquittal of Nichole Rice in 2025 closed one legal chapter, but left the narrative open. Remember Anita Knutson's name. Remember that she mattered. Remember that somewhere someone knows what happened in that apartment over the weekend of June 1st to 4th, 2007. Someone knows why the door was locked from the inside. Someone knows why the screen was cut with Anita's blood on it. Someone knows why an 18-year-old girl was stabbed twice in the chest while she lay in her bed. The question remains, if not Nichole Rice, then who? And if it was her, how did she leave no trace? These questions ensure Anita will not be forgotten, even if her murder is never solved. Remember her name, Anita Knutson. She was the girl everybody wanted to know. She deserved to live.